Today is World Poetry Day, and it's marked with a lot more events elsewhere across the globe. In our country, we've had some kind of resurgence, but not to the momentum that we all would need. Poetry, just like other sections of the art, is an expressive form of making sure that people tend to have their own views and sentiments sent to various audiences across various populations. And the concern has been that we've not been doing enough to make sure that we prop up the arts or the whole industry. And so as World Poetry Day, we decided to do a lot more discussions on the whole, that section of the arts, because poetry in itself is a form that will give a lot more ingenuity to many intellectuals, but also serve as the platform for which they can also express a lot more of their views. We have in the studio Kwame Agyeman Berko. He is a known poet in our country, Ghana. I would say that thanks for joining me this morning, Kwame.
It's a pleasure.
But particularly for World Poetry Day, for you who is in the arts, what does it mean to you?
First and foremost, I think it couldn't have been said better that the United Nations through UNESCO observes, UNESCO declares and then UN observes, through member states. So for us, in as much as Ghana is not warming itself as we would have wished to expressing herself through poetry, in our local parlance, in our traditional setup, Anwinsem is big deal. Orators are considered and are regarded as, artists, but the transition into civilization and then the current structure of arts and then communication, I think that's where we've had some challenges, and I wouldn't want to cite reasons, but would rather want to enjoy the occasion that has been observed from high and then trickling down to where we are today, so much that you are hosting an agent of poetry in my person, So for me, again, it is an immeasurable honor done as poets, writers, to sit here and to live for poetry, so to speak.
Traditionally, we know that, as you mentioned, orators are always in the palaces.
The royal bards.
Yes,
that's what they're called. Yeah.
And we also get to see them in the communities. At some point, you get to the community centers, and there are times that you always have to make sure you use that form of expressive arts as a form of entertainment, but also as a platform or a medium by which you can express yourself. How genuinely have we been able to maximize on some of these to, one, educate, inform, and notably entertain? In the present day,
thank you. In terms of education, I think we as Ghanaians, neighboring countries or states have, I don't know how they manage to do it, but it's quite prominent, their poetry, in terms of their educational structure. And you could sample opinion in the streets and ask people what poems, and they'll be giving you a lion and blah, blah, black sheep, and all those kiddie rhymes to serve as examples of what they can readily recall. And that is an unfortunate situation, because it cannot be so. But you can't blame the populace. It is probably because we as writers are not doing enough. If we were churning out enough material, we could, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, if you mention the Kwesi Bruce, the Kofi Awunos, the Atukwe Okines, there's a chasm between that era of writers and poets specifically, and then persons like myself, who is a Mino as compared to, let's say, a Nana Asase or a Chief Momen or Mutombo. They are paying their dues, but I don't know how we came to suffer that chasm in terms of stalwarts and persons who would give their all to churn out poetry. So for me, I am happy that currently, and even for entertainment, we have persons who are doing so well. who are so committed to the cause of and the art of poetry to make up for that deficiency. Because if we are developing as we want to develop as a nation, it is inexcusable that we let down the art of poetry.
Very interesting point you make. But the thing is, beginning of let's say the 90s, we saw more of the PANAFest, Pan-African Festival for Arts and Culture, and a lot more of the platforms that will give a lot more credence and the opportunity for many people to express some of these intellect in poetry. Is it because we've not had the diasporan support as we saw within the period, and as a result, we've not had the growth as we would witness?
I wouldn't want to cite diasporan support as a reason we are where we are. In fact, what else could the world of poetry have done for us? I quite remember, I mean, I was a child, but Maya Angelou came here at the first calling of PANAFest to perform poetry. Linton Kwesi Johnson, he is Jamaican, resident in the UK. He's one of the finest poets the world can pride itself with. He's about 67 years now. He was here in Ghana. Muta Baruka has been here forever, you know, and a few others who do spoken word and poetry at the highest level. For me, I think we failed as a people to have sustained that energy. Because once all these persons came down and rap poetry is an African thing. For them to have made it out there and come to pay homage, the onus then rest on us to have done our own thing. They couldn't have done anything more than for them to have come to lend support and to pave a way. So I think we have not done ourselves much, you know, in terms of churning out and then making poetry attractive enough for, you know, for it to be sustained. I think that would be my reason for why it is where it is now. Yeah.
Very interesting point you made. Who is chief movement to the world of poetry in our country?
I think for me, he's the best thing to happen to Africa in this new era in terms of poetry. And he's a playwright, a renowned one of Wogbe Ejike fame. I mean, Uncle Ebu White did us the favors by the resurgence of theater art. But I think Chief Moment with his Wogbe Ejike has raised the stakes and the interest. For me, he's one that we can only pride ourselves with, especially since he's Ghanaian.
And if you get to have the realization that, for example, for the Grammys, they have a category for spoken word, which is only one side of poetry, that is given a lot more credence and recognition, then you should know that a lot more people make a lot more money out of poetry.
Yeah.
Why is it that in our parts of the world that is not the case? We'll be here with Chief Moment, somebody we just referred to, and then he will also add up to a lot more other discussions. How we can genuinely create the platform for those who want to take that as their passion, but also earn a living out of. We're taking a break. When we come back, Chief Moment will be joining us for the discussions.
Forgotten. I feel sorrow. Now a deep breath from my lungs that sees all the pain from what I have become. I sat there and cried with a dozen forget-me-nots, but the forgetful have never forgot. But now I see with my eyes. I feel with my hands that coil around anger. I touch it, and it feels like silk to me. I come closer and let it take me. It invites me with that evil sound. I love it, so I embrace it. I become the insecure magma I criticize, not oblige, and that I never wanted to be, me. I still kiss it, and to me it smells good, for I have no things to give my passion to, but what I am now made of. A boiling hot kettle with temper, it will rise, so I cannot meet with my mind. Me and good cross paths, we glare, but we stare, frightened of what we have been, not begin. But still we shake hands, still remembering that we're enemies, still not friends, but to begin. This is the start, not my heart or my part. I'm still trying to forget, not recommend, but there's one more thing I need to say before I end. To start anew, I said I grew, but I had already knew that the forgetful have never forgot.
Okay. Without a title. From the Chinese gates of heavenly peace in Tiananmen Square for a thing. Out of the Arabian purity and cleanliness of Tahrir Square for something. Well after the Yanks christened thieves' lair as Times Square for their thing. Our ancient, freed and just converged at our Black Star Square for nothing. For the blitz you got as reward, wiped your square for everything. Court rise, all rise, order, order, thoughts rise, Lord's prize, honor, honor. Your Lordship, that is a joke. Indeed, you are a thief. Sounds funny. Would you prefer Gary to soak? But Balau in Nima is not funny. You shred the book of Judges, but kleptocracy. Brandish the books of our laws in hypocrisy. Your filth of honor is like no other. Hence our right to just and honor shall be defiled on your order. Piled on the scrap heap of your vial, filed in the trapped feet of your bile, we are heading to court your stench. Your Honor, may I approach your bench? But of course, you would rather in chambers tagged in our packets your favorite numbers. Left, right, left or right, left and right by your decree. Freedom at hand if only we agree. So drenched in the heat of our fate, we abide by the beats of your date. We are the Black Stars, hack. We resort to incantations to back. O Sokoto Ramasakata, Here Baba Ramasakata, Upeku Berima, in that order. I want to make libation is in order. When the Word was with God and the Word was God, God decreed, thou shalt not judge. But man decried and ordained you to judge. So you bore our coat of arms as archangels of our freedom and justice backed by arms. But by your acts and pacts as apostles of the law, you have now proved incapable to live up to your law. So instead of swing low, sweet chariot of an anthem, we shall stoop low, you harlots without an anthem. For the psalms claimed the harp and kings. Some claim the greens in whites and dare to preen. Others cling on to the rainbow as a nation. But you, not you, yes you, have confirmed us as mascots of a scorned nation. If there is ever any God of Anas, we are ever grateful. Alas.
Very interesting there. And what was the title of that?
Without a title.
Without a title.
Yeah.
Untitled. And now we have you, Chief Movement. I just have to Google, and then I see a lot more of your names in there, and your works and all the activities that you tend to undertake. And I was making reference to how even for a category of a Grammy Award is dedicated to spoken word. People can go to Amazon. They can go to wherever you iTunes, etc. You can buy people's works genuinely, and you pay dollars, top dollars for them. Why is it that in our part of the world it's becoming more like it's as if it's an unsung passion?
I think that it's a category that's growing, as you have rightly acknowledged. First of all, let me say congratulations to Kwame. It's a wonderful piece. I've heard you perform it at Joy FM before, actually. Okay. Yes, so thank you very much for that poem. First of all, it's an industry that is growing. Yes, it's true that in other parts of the world it's big. Even in Eastern and Southern Africa, poetry is big. People hold poetry shows and they are sold out. You go to Zimbabwe and you can't get to enter because there's a lot of clamor for it. I think it's an industry that is growing in Ghana. And for me, I'm very excited that as young people, young poets and other spoken word artists, we are creating the space for ourselves. I mean, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have a program where you have poetry on the agenda, where poets are invited to come and perform and are paid. But now it's happening. The likes of myself, Nasase, Mutombo, and other young poets are often poetry, Miss and that we're getting gigs. So for me, it's an industry that is growing. Now the question is, how fast can it grow and how big can we make it? And that is a challenge for us. But first of all, we have created that space. We are creating that audience base. It's now up for us to brand ourselves very well, to be able to hold big poetry shows at the National Theatre, at the Conference Center. At the moment, we do our own poetry shows, but in little corners on campus, at small events. And as he has his program that he does and other stuff. So I think that it's about time that we attract bigger sponsors so that we can glamorize our shows and make it bigger so that it can attract that audience. But I think there's an industry that is growing and it's just a matter of time. Yeah.
Well, during the period of nationalism in our country, it was a period when we used such platforms, using poetry, etc., to vent out our spleen, our sentiment, etc., for anti-colonialism and things like that. But now, can we make it a pure source of entertainment, a pure source of information, and a pure source of just giving people what they want by cultivating that sort of audience, Kwame?
Yeah, yes. I mean, you put it rightly that at post-independence, pre-independence, post-independence, we were expressing ourselves, in that art form, but. Citing that is almost as if now we do not have challenges that ought to be addressed again in that art form. There are lots of issues. I mean, this poem I just recited is a theme, obviously.
Yes, definitely. I was listening to the content. Yeah.
So we can only get better with practice. And for me, if we are hungry enough, if we are determined enough, I mean, I do not know what inspires one of Africa's finest sitting right here, but it is difficult to do what we do. It is not easy at all. So the onus lie on us as wordsmith to cite or to identify the areas that are almost no-go areas, and then we make an art out of, so as to appeal to the larger populace out there. Because that's all, I mean, primarily everybody speaks, everybody writes. What will set you an ordinary writer or speaker from a poet who is supposed to make an art form out of communication? So for me, it is more like we have to do more. We have to be creative to set us apart. Then we can provoke that economic reaction or appreciation in terms of fame and reaching out to a larger audience out there. Then it becomes ultimately it's a numbers game. So therefore, corporate bodies will find reason to it's unfortunate that apart from Nana Asase and him, there seem to be and Mutombo, these are names that readily come into mind. The rest of us, are not doing enough to give them some competition maybe, and then also to make it, because in numbers, then we can inform the development of this nation, you know. But if we leave it to them alone, they would come down soon. You know, and that is the reason I started doing this maybe about 5 months ago, 6 months, you know, and I look up to these persons to, you know.
Now, Chief Mumin, let me ask you this. Genuinely, would you say can you live by just doing pure poetry and writing?
No, at the moment you cannot sustain a livelihood on it. You know, you have to do other things. I mean, for myself, it has been an important factor. I mean, I started as a poet and I moved on to playwriting, and I'm now producing plays and providing all sort of creative solutions for people who want to use poetry, music, the various art forms. So pure poetry as it stands now in Ghana, you can't. But as I said, is an industry that is growing, you know. And just to tackle the earlier question you asked, poetry is a provocative art. Even the whole idea of spoken word came out of the civil rights movement that was used as a great expression against the Jim Crow laws, as well as the subservience of the system by then. So the very nature of it is renegade, it is revolutionary. So poets would always play a very important role in provoking society to think, to ponder on issues. So it is not just for the mere fun and the mere entertainment of it. It's a conscious form of art, and it will always play that important role. But as an industry and as something to sustain livelihood, I think it will take time. For me, speaking in my current capacity, I don't think it has been bad. I mean, I think I've made a little bit of income from what I do as a poet, but it's because I also support it with other areas, and because I'm also diversifying it and making it more exciting. So my whole projects, you know, for example, my Wabajeke project that you refer to, actually came out of my poetic inclinations, because I'm someone who likes history, I like our culture, our people, I try to understand our people, I try to talk about our people. So taking it from just mere words to dramatization and giving it that whole flamboyance is an aspect of what I do, which is now exactly what I do, like full time when I set up my company. So purely
you do art. So you're in the all your business is in the arts.
Yes.
It could be playwrights.
Yeah, playwriting, poetry, music, dance. You know, conceptualizing.
Give us the piece you have, and then when I come back, I'll ask you a question on how we can use the current art forms and the technologies around to reach out to a lot more.
Since this is International World Poetry Day, I'm taking this poem for a very reason. And Kwame refers.
Is this somebody's work or yours?
Yeah, this is someone's work. This is actually the first poem that I had that inspired me to go into the art. And it was a performance by Maya Angelou at Panafest at the National Theatre. I was a 10-year-old boy sitting behind my mom's black and white.
Which year was that?
Somewhere in the 90s.
Okay.
Yes, sitting behind my mom's black and white TV, and this woman comes on stage at the Panafest.
And you loved it then?
And I was
behind the black and white TV?
Yes. And something just, you know, it was an epiphany. I just realized that, oh wow, this is something I want to do, this is something I can do. And I started writing. It's entitled, Still I Rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of ties. Just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eye, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, cause I love like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard? You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air I rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my ties? Out of the hearts of history's shame, I rise. Up from the past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I am a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Maya Angelou. So this is the
so for example, he's reading from a tab, etc. How can we use technology, Kwame, to improve reaching out to a lot more? Like, you know, maybe you create apps and people can just download for a fee or something of the sort. Can give them that sort of inspiration.
With my background as an artist manager, having done that forever all my adult life.
Artist manager means like who you produce musicians and things like, or manage
Yes,
musicians.
I managed Tiny for 9 years.
I didn't
did
know that.
Becca.
I
I
didn't
did
know that.
Free. I produced Love of My Life, the award-winning song.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I mean,
That's great.
yeah, now I am doing my own thing. So for me, it's no brainer, and for anybody to
If you say it's no
employ,
brainer, we have to get there.
it's as simple.
We have
as
no
that,
choice.
you know, and especially with the way we almost always are alive. We live on social media, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. It's only a matter of putting your content there, making it available, making it. I mean, there are ringback tune service providers and all the digital forms that anybody could think of. Because unlike currently, I mean, is the situation. In previous past, you'd have to rely on an executive producer and you know, pray and do a lot of things before you get the funding. But now it is at everybody's fingertip. You know, we spend credit, I mean, mobile credit. So why do you not channel those energies into advertising your produce? It's as simple as that. You do not need a huge company, unless of course you are well set up.
So you're
like,
saying that now getting closer to the audience is a lot more easier.
It's
Oh yeah,
easy.
I mean, and let me just
easy.
say that, I mean, you mentioned
Because we
the
have to
fact
wrap
that,
up, so
yeah, there are a lot of younger poets in the system now. There are a lot of great guys coming up, the likes of Gombela, Yewura. I mean, you go to campus, you know, so many
There's this guy
young
who comes
people.
here all
all
very
the time.
often,
So yes,
Okay.
yeah, of course, Oswald
Yeah,
is also
yeah,
like
yeah.
my mate. But my point is that there are a lot of younger guys now coming up. The field is now like people are now getting more excited about it. They are getting the confidence. So yes, even though a couple of us might have that media exposure because I've been doing this for 10 years now. So it goes without saying that at least we'd have had some kind of exposure. But the industry is growing, the field is growing. There's a whole lot of people coming, and these people are using social media. I don't use social media as much as they do. If you go to YouTube, I really don't have a lot of poems on YouTube. You'll not find a lot of my works online. But these people are
You don't have a lot of
constantly-
your audience
Yeah,
there.
but these young people are actually, they are shooting videos, they are doing poetry
Albums
videos,
and-
albums, they are sending it out on WhatsApp, and it's something that I plan to do. Next year is going to be 10 years of my
Go do it
doing
then.
this and
World
active in the
Poetry
industry.
Day, and that's why we're here today. Chief Moment is a known poet. You just have to Google his name, and then you get to see some of his works. He's saying that now the whole revolution of using technology and a lot more of the gadgets we have around and the technology themselves to reach out to a lot more of us is a way to go. Chief Moment, thanks for passing
Thank you very
through.
much, Roland.
And
Thank
also Kwame Ajiman Bekon has been here, has been artist manager, but also now doing a lot of his work, and we're always available to help you as always. So,
Thank you.
for example, now my director will show something to you on your screens, and this is somebody's work that is being done or has been put or uploaded on YouTube, Pakpuado, for example, and we'll play that when we take the break. But what you do, is it the same thing like Franklin is doing and just playing music around? Same thing? Almost like it.
Yeah, but it has to be a sync, a chemistry to
Okay.
it. You just don't.
So you just have to put all the pieces together. We're taking a break. When we come back, we're talking Down syndrome, and then we're talking a lot more issues. Do stay on.